What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the XRP price chart. It's been a while since we've sat here and talked about the current price action going on with XRP. Well, really, because I suspected that we were going to be kind of ranging here for the next couple of months, and so be it, we have been, as we were talking about back here in this time zone, where it was really just a washing machine down in there after we had already completed a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, for those who remember, the 22.5 cent days, and then just washing machine for quite a while after that. As we've discussed over the last several months, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but still kind of residing within that washing machine over here. So in this video, we'll actually take a look at what the XRP price chart has done in the past, what we're looking like right now, to see if we can draw any similarities to what we have seen before. When I look at this, it reminds me of two particular time periods on the XRP price chart. One of them being right in here, and the other one being right in here. And yikes, those are two completely different scenarios. One of them broke to the top of the range, firing up thousands of percents. The other one broke to the bottom of the range, going down another 60, 70%. And regardless of which one ends up playing out in here, we're going to dive really deep. We're going to look at bigger time frames on the weekly time frame and the monthly time frame to see if we see similarities between the two. Either way, in both of them, my suspicion, my speculation is really that we're just kind of somewhere right in here as we reside right in here. And the reality is, actually, both of these things are actually exactly the same. I was making YouTube videos back here in late 2019 and early 2020 discussing all of this, and we were looking at fractals, we were looking at the Fibonacci retracements that were happening in here, and they actually are identical. They're just much bigger magnitudes. But obviously, from a time perspective in here, it was only a mere 200 days later, this thing was firing off 6,000%, whereas really it took 568 more days before we even able to break above that range. So which one are we closer to, right? What are we looking like underneath the hood going on here with XRP? Well, the first thing that I see here, obviously, is just we all know that we didn't go break into a new all-time high here in 2021. So it starts to beg the question of, do we have the typical bull run, crash, retrace, reaccumulation, whereas we have 2018 bull run, crash, retrace, reaccumulation. And for me, things I'll be looking for to say, well, you know, which one are we mirroring more, right? So like when we came down in here, we obviously know we ended up having to break down much lower to end up finally hitting that capitulation, whereas the kind of capitulation actually ended up happening right here. There's an illiquid wick that we're seeing over here on Bitstamp. However, that's not the case everywhere. I think that's just an API issue. That's a very specific situation here with Bitstamp. Even when we put it on the smaller time frame, you see there was just some wick that happened in here. But that capitulation occurred in here, whereas capitulation occurred in here. So let's switch to a bigger time frame here. Let's go to the weekly time frame and take a peek underneath the hood to see what was going on in these circumstances. We could see that capitulation happens here, and we dip close to oversold RSI for the weekly time frame for the XRP price chart. Looking at this time period right here for XRP, we could see the most oversold in history right there at that point. However, we're talking about, well, are we mimicking something like this? I'll change that color. Or are we mimicking something like this? And so if we assume we've been working our way down like we have in the past, and then there's more working down to go, then we should look similar to what we've looked like right in here, where we haven't really gotten super oversold yet. As you can see right here, we did not dip down into the most oversold. We can also draw that back over to here to see we had actually been more oversold back in 2015. In addition, it was kind of holding that 40 level. So for those who've been monitoring what we talked about with RSI, you've got that 40 level that can act as your support. Then you break through 40, then things get really dicey. And then in a bear, you have your 60 overhead, which is resistance, which you can even see in here, right? You can see this on the weekly time frame. You have 60 here as your resistance. Once it finally holds the support, pulls up, it gets to where it gets to 60 and then continues back down. But notice the oversold didn't come down in here until we actually ended up hitting our bottom over here, which is similar to what we saw back in 2015. So one would think that if we're kind of working something like this right in here, that we'd be showing similar behavior to what we saw back in here. And well, the good news for those who are not cheering for the prices to go crumbling all the way back down to the 2020 lows is that we're not acting the same in regards to how oversold we've gotten. You can clearly see that over here. We went ahead and hit that oversold level, and we hit the most oversold in history. Unlike in here, where we were still maintaining 40, We had not hit as oversold as we had seen before, and the sellers did not get exhausted quite yet. However, here, unquestionably, we can see that, wow, the most in history. Flipping over to the monthly time frame, this is where things start to get a little bit more, where the answer really isn't as clear in here. But we're going to drop to a different time frame here in a second. I'll show you why it's not perfectly clear to distinguish between these two right in here, is that we could see that the stochastic RSI is starting to move up. Sellers are waning, and we could see that it is actually still pointed up currently right now. Kind of paused out there for a moment, but it's still pointed up at this current time. We haven't gotten enough information on the 1 month chart to say, are we acting like we were acting back in here, or are we acting like we were acting back in here? Because you can see the two things that happen. Stochastic RSI continued to work its way up. We were getting stronger and stronger, yet remaining within the range. However, at this time period right in here, we were hovering on the lows as we have back in here before. It did eventually work its way up on the stochastic RSI, but this is about as high as it could get, and then boom, it goes right back down to the lows, right? So we come back down to the lows over here, but we've kind of already been given the signal here that, hey, look, we're just weak right now. Whereas back in here, right, what do? Yeah, we turn over a little bit, but we just kind of keep working our way up, and we get up into strength levels. In here, we could barely get off the floor and then go right back down to the lows. We haven't been given any of that kind of signal here yet to know which one's happening yet. Are we going to keep kind of working our way up? We're going to stay within the range, but we're just kind of building that strength pressure happening in here? Or are we just going to kind of work our way right back down yet? And that answer hasn't been given yet in here because we are still pointed to the upside. If we start kind of working our way up higher, right, if this thing just keeps working its way up higher, yet we remain range bound, it's a better sign than what we saw happening back in 2019 and 2020. But we haven't been given a clear answer here yet as to what's going on yet. It would be nice to say that it was more clear cut on the MACD, like we've talked about over there on Bitcoin and we've talked about on the altcoin market. Let's pull those up really quick. That when we go back to 2015 and when we go back to 2019, by the time the MACD started to turn around in here, we can see this right here. By the time we were turning around right here in February of 2019, the bottom was already in. We can go back in here to 2015, lay our marker down in here, right? By the time we started turning around in here, the bottom was already in. The story was the same over here in 2022. Well, really close to the bottom being in, did poke one more lower. We saw the same for the altcoin market cap, and the altcoin market cap was able to hold that level still at this point. So even the altcoin market, you see that in here too, right? By the time we flipped in here, it had marked that the bottom was already in. You can see it double bottomed. We have double bottomed as well this year. But when we look at XRP, it was not that clear cut back here in 2019. So you say to yourself, okay, well, look, we've done that here on XRP too. Does that give us a signal? No, on XRP, it did not in 2019. It's still meandered on. Remember, this is all still pre-SEC versus Ripple stuff. All your Ripple and SEC stuff happens right here with that big monster nasty candle of like negative 80%. So this monthly time frame, I don't believe gives like super clear cut because we still need at least more information to look at in regards to how is the stochastic RSI going to play out. Because even if we look at the relative strength, well, the relative strength's holding these levels, but it can hold it for a long time. In both scenarios, it can hold it for a long time and not give a clear-cut answer here on the monthly time frame. So I don't think there's a clear enough signal coming in here from the monthly time frame to give us an idea based on what we saw throughout history. I think if I'm looking for anything on the monthly time frame to give any type of clue, it would be this stuff right in here. If we kind of peter out in here and we start heading right back down to the lows, well, it just means it's probably going to be a long time ahead, right? It's favoring this scenario here of a drift for a much longer time period. However, if it can get through there, and even if we stay range bound as we did back in 2016, and we just play around up here with higher strength, even though we stay range bound, it's giving a more optimistic view that the strength underneath the hood is higher than what we were seeing back there back in 2019. So that's the thing kind of waiting for on the 1 month time frame. And just haven't been given the answer for it yet. So when I look at the monthly time frame, I say, yeah, it's actually done the same thing both of these did, because both of these kind of did the same thing. The only difference was stochastic RSI was able to get a little bit more juice out of here to show that this range was getting ready for something big coming. And we do see that stochastic RSI is pointed up here right now on the monthly time frame, but there kind of came this pop, then drop, and we haven't seen a pop here. We haven't seen the pop here, and then the drop and how high that stochastic RSI can get first. So I think on the monthly time frame, it's just not there yet. But I do see over here on the weekly time frame that we've definitely done the things that have happened when you get to bottoms, right? In that when you came down in here, we hadn't even hit as oversold as we had hit back in 2015 at that point. Right now, not only have we hit back as oversold as we did back in here, we hit back as oversold as here. We went the most oversold ever. So I think we, on the weekly time frame, have more mirroring of what was going on back in here. But that's just on the weekly time frame, right? Like on the monthly time frame, you just don't have the answer. So can you get closer to that monthly time frame to look for an answer? Can you say go to 3 weeks? And can you draw anything from what's going on underneath the hood at 3 weeks? So instead of using these candles as 1 week, or each candle represents 1 month, each individual one of these candles represents a 3-week time period. And so looking at the relative strength in here, we can see that relative strength came all the way back down to 40. This is the historical support level down in here for it to have already bottomed. You can see in here back in 2018 through 2019, this time period in here, it had not quite gotten there yet. Now we have. We've hit just as deep as we've gone, even in capitulation periods, right back in here. We see a lot of juice coming out of here over in the stochastic RSI, and we'll get our new candle over here on March 6th. But the thing is, take a look down here on the MACD at this point in time. You can actually see we got real close to that cross ended up happening right back down in here. And look how close we are to getting a cross happening right down in here. Where is this cross at? It's right in that same time period we keep talking about in there, to where it gets to where it's about to do it, and then it fails to be able to do it and keeps going down lower. And then it's not until down in here where the cross actually does occur here on the 3-week time period that we say, okay, the bottom has already been marked in. We're marching our way up in here. So right now we're kind of at that point of, are we going to get to cross through? Are we going to get to see this thing start to turn its way back up? Because if we start turning our way back up, well, then all signs are good from what we've seen in the past here on the 3-week time frame, that 3 weeks will give us that signal before monthly can give us our signal. 1 week gives us our signal, but it's not enough. We really want to see it on even higher time frames coming in here, that we're mimicking more of strength really building for an explosion to happen, and not false strength that just kind of crumbles. And so to get it on bigger time frames, I would think this would be one of the things we want. We have conditional requirements met of bottoms being in. We have strength starting to turn its way back up. But the thing is, we probably want to see this here on the 3-week. The good news about this is this does close in 4 days. So we'll get to see what this thing does in 4 days, and the trajectory of it currently right now says we'll get that cross happening next, or we'll get the answer of no, we won't. So we have the signals, I think, on the weekly time frame. We don't really get much out of the monthly time frame, except it's saying, hey, these are the similar conditions to say the bottom is already in this circumstance right in here. But those conditions were also really close right here, and they kind of tricked us with the stochastic RSI. Also, at the 3-week time frame, you get that trick right there. So how about the 2-week time frame? I think it's a little bit harder in here on at least the stochastic RSI. I'd say the one thing you can see in here, though, so we're talking about this time period in here, is we can see how high stochastic RSI got on the 2-week time frame. If we're comparing to this time frame, and then we're comparing to this time frame, notice at this point and at this point, stochastic RSI did not get that high. It stalled out much lower. However, for us, in current times, we're doing similar to what we saw back then. Then drifting lower, and then drifting and drifting. So we got more juice happening in here and upward pressure. Also, looking down to the MACD, we see we got a cross followed by a false cross, and then taking a long time. Not very good data to use right down in here for the MACD on the 2-week time frame. But you could see that if we're only about this far in, if we're just sitting like right down in here, if we're just sitting like right down in here, well, we already crossed a long time ago. So, I'd say inconsistent, and I wouldn't feel comfortable relying on that. Looking to the relative strength, right down into the oversold levels. Unlike back in here and in here, where we had not gotten down to the oversold on the 2-week time frame. It took us getting to capitulation to finally reach that. And we have already reached that in here as well, as you can see that. Put that right down there. You can see we have reached the most oversold in history. That 2-week selling pressure that we saw back in June, Luna, UST, Three Arrows Capital, Celsius, all that stuff, that selling pressure we saw in XRP was as strong as C19. So imagine that. That was not the case down in here, as we can see in here, which we had already seen higher sell pressure down in here. That led into this moment. So in summary, what do we see? Weekly time frame, most oversold in history. I think that's a good sign because in this time period, we were not the most oversold in history. We had been more oversold than this moment multiple times. You can see that back in 2014 and 15. We had been more oversold than that 3 separate times, not the bottom. It took us actually getting all the way down to the most oversold in history to say it was the bottom on the weekly time frame. Have we met that condition? Definitely. Otherwise, on these oscillations right in here, I don't think there's enough conclusive evidence to draw from either one of them. I think the thing you can see on the weekly time frame is going to be relative strength. The 2-week time frame, I think the story is the same. We had been more oversold on the 2-week time frame back in this time period than we were down in here. It took us finally getting to that level down in here to say the bottom is actually already in. We have gone down that low already. Positive, favoring this over this. In addition, we saw stochastic RSI have more energy in here in our current time frame as we did back in 2016, unlike 2018 and 19. 3-week time frame, story is very similar. Looking over at the relative strength, not the most oversold in history on the 3-week time frame in this time period right in here. We had been oversold here on the bull run crash retrace reaccumulation. That reaccumulation capitulation was more oversold than this period right in here, where XRP had already crashed 90% at that point. Even at the bottom of 90%, less oversold than it was back in here. We had to get more oversold and be the most oversold ever. Now, what do we have here? Have we reached down to levels that are the most oversold in history on the 3-week time period? And the answer is yes. We hit it. We got more oversold than during the C19. So those conditions are met on a higher time frame now, the 3-week. Now we're sitting here saying, okay, we've seen this before. We've seen being in here, gaining some juice, and then losing it. Question is, can it here on the 3-week maintain it? We've got it. We're strong. In 3 weeks, it's a big time frame to be strong on. We've been tricked here in 2019. Can we get the juice building right here in 2023? So I think the conclusion that we see through all of this is that when you're looking at how oversold this market got, you've got it on lots of different time frames. Even our monthly time frame does give us that we hit down to the lows of C19. I think on every time frame you have that the conditional requirements have been met as if we were over here. I think it massively favors it on the 1-week time frame for multiple indicators, the 2-week time frame for multiple indicators, and then it's about confirming the 3-week and the 4-week. And so with the or not the 4-week, the monthly, is that if we want to see similarities of where we have under the hood strength starting to emerge in here as we continue to range, to just see that strength start to build up in here. And hate it or love it, this is just typical price behavior for XRP. And so if we kind of have an idea of like maybe where we are at right now, is that, are you in something more like this? Maybe so. I think you get a better fit in something more so along the lines like this. On the 1-week and the 2-week time frame, underneath the hood with the indicators, we have a lot of things showing similarities to not only is price action behaving very similar to as if we're starting to build juice and get going, but I think what I'm trying to kind of prove to is that this price behavior that we're having happen in here can also be interpreted as that this was just kind of a pause out before things got ugly again. The difference is when looking at bigger time frames, when looking at like the 3-week and the 1-month time frames, both of these did give very different signals in these moments right in here. But what did both of them end up doing? Both of them ended up having this happen in here, and both of them pulled back in. So ranges still continued to happen in here, but yet one drifted off, and still this took like another 1.5 years before anything started to emerge. Whereas with this one, it just started rampaging right away. So I'm still under the thought process that ranging is still going on. Still 2023 going to be exciting, but there's probably ranging still going on here for XRP. But what I'm watching for is on the bigger time frames, are we showing all those same things that are happening underneath the hood of what happened for this thing to get rocking? Or do we start kind of doing a lot of the same stuff under the hood that was happening in here? But in both circumstances, right, we saw kind of what happened. You still got a little bit more ranging to happen. We went back up to the range heights, which for XRP right now would be about 55 cents. And then it drifted back down to the lows again right now. So it wasn't like we were at the end of the range. We were just kind of halfway through. And I just kind of have to accept that for what it is, right? And so also, is there a conditional requirement coming up for XRP to go on some type of big run? Well, it'd be like with Bitcoin going back into a retracement. And so one thing to also take into mind too, when it comes to XRP, is that people usually get really frustrated too, right before those moments, right before those things end up happening, because we'll see the whole market drifting up. I mean, could you imagine if we actually had this, right? Like if Bitcoin does end up like kind of ABCing back down in here, and then finally Bitcoin gets out, and then Bitcoin is just kind of marching all the way up in here, and Bitcoin's already all the way back to like $48,000, right? And XRP, all that's done is something like this, and we're still right there. We're still like 37 cents right there for XRP, while Bitcoin's already all the way back up at 48. What would people be doing? I know exactly what people would be doing because I've been here long enough. BCP, we're retracing. Why isn't it going? BCP, what's going on? That's because what people want is they want price to trend with Bitcoin and go slow. And this type of trend, what are you looking at? You're looking at 121 days as it grinds up 95%. But that is not what has ever happened with XRP. That has never, ever, ever been the price behavior of XRP. Like even right here, this is actually on April 3rd of 2021. We know that like the Pico top of the market, the YOLO time is April 14th, right? And it's only 11 days of wild action, price action that happens right in there, and then it's over, right? And you go back and you look throughout history and you say, well, what happens? How much time elapses for these moves to actually happen for XRP? All of them, right? This one, it's a matter of 10 days. This one, it's a matter of 20 days. This one is a matter of 24. So the number of days of you're going to be tortured with this thing based on how it has always behaved is that Bitcoin will move up, market will move up, excitement will move up, XRP will torture you to death, even until this moment right back in here, while Bitcoin's over $61,000, $62,000. We're still sitting right in here, unable to take out the peak from November of 2020. We're still sitting right over here, right? And then boom, it's 11 days. That's it. That's all you got, 11 days. And so I have to go into it with that thought process as well, is that whatever ends up happening in there, if a big move does happen, history does not say that it'd be longer than like 40 days. That would be the extent of it. So whatever move ends up happening, no matter how big it is, how small it is, the length of time is not going to trend the 120 days with Bitcoin. It is likely going to torture you. And like you think that's a short amount of time, 40 days right there, just for comparison, right? Like this is what 24 days looks like. Like 24 days and it's over. Right? That's all you get. So that's just part of the stuff that I think about too in my mind. Like I recognize it, the excitement will come, and I talk a lot about managing emotions and things like that. And it's not just in the gloom and doom times when everybody is screaming the sky is going to fall, and you're a dingus if you don't think the sky is going to fall, because it's definitely going to fall. Not just being scared with the herd, but it's just like at the tops, right? Being YOLO with the herd and going through moments like this, remembering what these are like when they're only 24 days, and you go from 21 cents to $3.30 in a matter of 20 days. The world changes drastically at these moments. You think to yourself, wow, if you're not doing any type of technical analysis, you're thinking these things are going to go skyrocketing because suddenly the narrative shift just totally happens. I mean, at this time right here, you suddenly have CNBC teaching people how to go through the process of buying XRP, like getting assets on Coinbase, transferring them to another exchange, getting XRP. Like they're walking the audience through the process on how to do it. So if you had a 20-day period where a price moves up really fast, CNBC has got just headlines everywhere. Wow, Ripple, like the first company to defeat the SEC. Then like 5 days later, Kraken relists XRP. 5 days later, Binance US 10 days later, everybody's screaming, Coinbase, what's the deal? What's going on? Boom, Coinbase relists XRP. We're like 15, 20 days in. Like really run through the emotions of what that would be like if you finally get a technical level hit of something like $9, $10, $11 or something like that. And you have CNBC like proclaiming this was the most amazing victory in crypto, legitimacy coming to a lot of cryptocurrencies, guidelines, clear guidelines for people to follow. XRP is considered one of the most regulatory compliant cryptos in the world, and in particular in the United States. Price is surging. Everybody's like, this is the best thing ever. And you're like, dude, I've been sitting here for 5 years waiting for this moment. Finally, we're vindicated. We're validated. We were right all along. And we're finally being acknowledged on TV. Okay, I'm going to sell my bag now and move on. I think that is an emotional thing that would be difficult for a lot of people to handle. I haven't been through that moment, but I play it through my head, what that moment would be like. And because it's not as easy as Bitcoin. Bitcoin was a grind all the way up through October and November and December and January and February. It gave all the time in the world to sit there and be like, hey, you guys know this thing's going to crash, right? Doesn't matter, BCB, laser eyes and diamond hands, man. We're part of a movement, bruh. But I just don't think that this asset in particular, with how much YOLO comes into it, will give that opportunity to spend much time thinking about it. So, point being, this is your normal range and stuff. On the 1 week, 2 week, hey, even the 3 week and monthly, we see lots of stuff saying bottom's already in. In previous examples of looking back on this, it tells us the range still kind of continues to go on a little bit longer. And we'll look to see if those higher time frames can start to flash more of those signals of what happens before the bull really gets moving. My personal bet is that we are in something like this rather than something like this, because we have so many things on multiple time frames favoring this, but we still need like a little bit more to validate those higher time frames. And, you know, in each circumstance, we still had more ranging to do. And the nice thing is we haven't even had that happen yet in here. So it provides a little bit more optimism as well that, you know, if that big move comes, that pop ends up happening in here to get back to the top of the range at 55, 56 cents, it's likely going to push those other indicators up higher too, like the monthly and the 3 week time frame, to really make it look a whole lot more like what was going back on in here. So, like I've said, really optimistic for 2023. I think there's going to be some curveballs in here. There's going to be some boring stuff. I think we're going to see sentiment go in the gutter again at some points throughout the year. But it doesn't change what I'm seeing happening in here to where I think we're still going to see a very exciting 2023. But like we see in all of these examples, you look through all of Bitcoin's history, XRP's history, everything, when those moments come, they don't take a whole year. You don't get like every month a nice solid 20% return, right? You'll get 1 month where it's big, 4 months where it's just garbage, and then 1 month where it's gigantic, and then 5 months where it's just total nonsense horror, and then another month where it's just absolutely YOLO crazy. And that's just how the markets end up working. And so I have all these things flashing on multiple time frames, multiple assets, and like we were talking about with even Filecoin, right? Just showing like the whole structure of it, that the bottom is in, and how this was the completion of Bitcoin, right? Like if you look back to 2014 and 15 for Bitcoin, it took 409 days from peak to capitulation. Filecoin took 405 days peak to capitulation, 405 versus 409. You look at the Wyckoff accumulation schematic that happened for Bitcoin down in here, 288 days before it could break out of the Wyckoff accumulation schematic, 282 days for the Filecoin market cap. We just have it flashing everywhere throughout this market that it's a good time, but it doesn't mean we don't have range moments. So my personal expectations on XRP, if we're going to assess, hey, this is how history has kind of played out, that there's still some drifting in here till finally something shows up in here. We'll range around in here for a little bit and come back one more time. And then at this moment in time, we look for it all. We say, do we have them all flashing? Are we looking like back in here? Or are we looking like right back in here? And if we get everything flashing in here, I'll be straight with you on what I do hope. And this is going to be not favored. And it's because I have a diversified portfolio. XRP may be my biggest holding, but I have a diversified portfolio. Is that if we start seeing a lot of cryptos really taking off and XRP lagging behind, I'll take that all day because that will give me the opportunity to sell all of those off and jam all of it into XRP at the last moment, which is historically how things have played out. So I'm okay either way. XRP, you want to take off and you want to go fly and be the first out the gates, by all means, go for it. Let's get the show on the road. Let's lift the morale of the XRP community up quite a bit. But if it wants to behave exactly like it always has, so for those who are going to get frustrated if they see Bitcoin retracing and XRP hasn't taken off yet or done anything, and they're like, why isn't it doing it? You very clearly see every bull run. It's like 10 days, 20 days, 24 days. They happen at like the last minute. Even this one right here, like Bitcoin was already at 60K, then 11 days, right? It's just historically how it's going to behave. And of course, I don't know if it's going to behave like that. But, you know, if your expectations are set differently, that it's based on whatever wild conspiracies you're following or whatnot, or a switch being flipped, right? That, like, you know it too, right? Because if something like this is happening, what is going to be the thing people are screaming? They're going to say the switch is flipped. They flipped the switch. Oh my gosh, it's never going to stop because the switch has been flipped. But it's just how this asset behaves, and I do not know what it is that causes this asset in particular to act like this. Whether if this is a period of Ripple reducing their dumping or whatnot, I don't know what it is, but it is just always like this, that anytime we're moving up, these things are just so dramatic, but they always like to be drama filled right until the last second. And I always tell the story about this too, because I was hearing this one too, is that, you know, from right here to right here, Bitcoin ran in the 2017 bull run. It ran from like $1,500 to $18,000, and XRP was still down 50%, while Bitcoin went like this. So, you know, Bitcoin's just going nice and trendy like this, and XRP is way down in here. And then 24 days, that's how it does it. So if you're looking for something that is nice and trendy, this guy is not your friend. And just kind of have to go with that. That's just how it usually is. But I wanted to spend this video kind of showing that, you know, on the weekly and the 2-week time frame, you know, we're flashing all those things that said, you know, we're kind of doing that same kind of ranging action before a bull run began for XRP, as we've done it in the past. But if we look at like the 3-week and the monthly time frame, we could see that those did behave differently than they did in 2018 and 2019. And so hopefully over the course of the next few weeks, that we can actually get more things to start to translate into the 3-week time frame and the monthly time frame to really start building that kind of excitement, at least for me, that, man, I really do think it's coming. And I wanted to just kind of show where we're at, because we don't talk too much about the actual XRP price behavior right now, because my thought process has been that we're just kind of ranging. And so if we are ranging, then what would we be looking for after a range to finish completion, right? And so the things I'm looking at are the technical indicators under the hood, the strength underneath the hood, to say, this is how we've acted previously before things got really exciting, or this is how we acted before things got kind of rough. So far, we're favoring the exciting side, but we need a couple more weeks to see if we can really validate it on the monthly time frame and on the 3-week time frame. And so I thought I'd just kind of give that little bit of an update. But all right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching this video on the XRP price chart. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.